Mark Twain. It's not about the size of the dog in the fight. It's about the size of the fight in the dog. It's not about the size of the dog in the fight. It's about the size of the fight in the dog. Mark Twain. I thought that would be a good quote for this episode. Now, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Gentlemen, ladies, welcome. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining me. Are you well? Good. So, given the sort of intriguing nature of the title of this episode, I figured it might be one of the more popular editions of Tim's podcast, and who knows, maybe we'll hit triple figures. Wouldn't that be something? Triple figures, imagine that. Only time will tell. So, yeah, I did a episode 4 was entitled Broaching the Subject of Mental Health. And so I touched on things briefly there. And so I thought this episode I'd sort of flesh things out a little bit more and give you a bit more detail into what bipolar is, and more specifically, what it's like for me. So many of the people from school, many of my school friends and people who knew me for a while, might be sort of somewhat perplexed as to why I'm sort of maybe, I don't know, so far behind in life. It's quite funny. So I was quite a precocious little chap, little lad. So I was particularly gifted in maths back in the day. And so I don't know, I was just born quite good at it, but also just really interested in it. And so up until like the age of 13, I mean, I was still up to all sorts of usual tricks and stuff, but I did, I excelled quite significantly. So I took my maths GCSE 4 years early, and by the time I was 12, I was tutoring my eldest brother through his A-levels, sort of. And then I moved schools, so I went to a state school year 7 and 8, and then got a scholarship to Magdalen College School, which I loved. It was a great school. I absolutely loved that school. And yeah, and then continue to do very well in that. And so there's this thing called the Maths Challenge. I don't know if you've heard of it. Maths Challenge. It's kind of like this thing that everyone sits, and it's more problem solving maths. And so it's not so much about like, do you know the formulas? Have you done it's like new problems, simple like syllabus content, so to speak, but more complex problems. And so I used to get gold in that. And then if you do well in the maths challenge, you go to this thing called the Olympiad, the mathematical Olympiad. And so I used to do them. So the junior mathematical Olympiad, years 7 and 8, I did those in Charwell, my old school, and would get gold in the Olympiad. And then when I got to Magdalen, I continued to do well. And then in year 10, in the intermediate Olympiad, so it's a 3-hour exam, 6 questions, and you have to write up proofs. Not only it's not about getting the right answer, it's about writing a proof. So you write 6 proofs over 3 hours, and 10 marks available for each, so 60. And so anyway, in year 10, I got 60 out of 60 in the Maths Olympiad, and was top in the country with only a sort of handful of other people managing that. So that was quite cool. And then I got invited to selected maths camps. So I got one which was in Yorkshire, a week-long residential camp, which was for like a load of people. That was like 60 or so people, and it was intensive math lectures and problem solving. It was really interesting, and I met a really good friend of mine who I've kept in touch with. So Matt Cole, I'm not sure if I know how to pronounce your name. Cole Clow. Anyway, Matt, super clever guy. Makes films these days. Was at Oxford. Anyway, so Matt, if you're listening, met you there. And then I also got invited to a slightly more esteemed one, which was in Queen's College, Oxford. And that was all expenses paid, residential, and it was only about 15 of us. So it was like top 15 in the country. It wasn't too bad. And yeah, and then so that was year 10, and then I sort of like, anyway, I was sort of known as the maths kid, and I had elder brothers at school, and so like I'd always have like, it'd be quite cool, I guess. I don't know, just like when you're in year 8, year 13, people look really, anyway, so like just everyone throughout the school kind of knew me as the maths genius kid, and it was quite cool. I was like, and there are certain like mental arithmetic things that you can do, like squaring numbers or cube roots, and there are small tricks to them, and they're really not that difficult. Like if you sat down over an afternoon, you could do them as well as I could. But like people think and then you just pull out some of those tricks, and people just think you're like, anyway, so that was kind of my identity in that age. But I was doing loads of other stuff. I mean, I was misbehaving and so on. I wasn't like a nerd or anything, but anyway, I kind of just got bored of that. And then anyway, so all that spiel, and then compare that to where I am today. So top 15 in the country. And then today, so I'm 21, I took 2 gap years. I didn't get into Cambridge. I got into Bristol to study physics and philosophy. Did my first year last year. Really struggled. Ended up dropping philosophy like ASAP because I couldn't handle the workload. I couldn't read, I couldn't write. So dropped philosophy after the first set of exams. Although passed the philosophy module and comfortably. It was quite fun, but actually not. It wasn't fun. It was such dry content. Anyway, and then yeah, like really struggled with first year physics at university, and not even at Cambridge, but hey ho. And then passed all the exams, but the labs, experimental side of labs in university are a massive step up, and like they actually require work. Anyway, so I ended up just not completing what I had to do in order to pass the labs module. So I'm retaking. So I'm doing a supplementary year, which doesn't mean it means I'm not retaking the whole. Basically, I'm just spending a whole year to do one module, which is the labs unit. So it's very good, but it is quite funny. So here I am, my best mate Fred. If you're watching this, Fred, he's just graduated from Oxford. So he's got an Oxford degree, and here I am at Bristol, retaking first year. So there's a story to be told, I guess. And I don't know. I I don't know how much of the story I can tell in this episode, but I'll try and sort of focus on the bipolar element. So, you know, how do you go from age 14 to now? And then how do you also end up in my position and look back on it and see it as a good thing? Strange. It's funny how life works. So, yeah, how did I fall quite so drastically behind the pack? Very good question. Very good question. So I don't know. I guess I was born with a different type of mind, and I think it helped very much when I was young. And it was only when I was about 16 that I first had my first sort of experience of depression. And then ever since that, I haven't managed to have got through a winter without feeling really depressed for many months. Until this year. So this year is a massive achievement for me. It's now December, and I've been functioning all the way through till mid-December. So that's a massive achievement for me. So yeah. So that's a big achievement. So what is it like to have bipolar? Well, in the words of Kanye West, I think it says on his album, is it Yay? I don't know. Anyway, that one with the Wyoming one with the mountains, it says, I hate being bipolar. It's awesome. And that's kind of it, really. So it used to be called manic depressive disorder. And I share it with the likes of people like Stephen Fry and Kanye West and my old therapist Charles, and so a whole range of people. And it's very interesting. I was listening to Stephen Fry's Cambridge Union talk yesterday, and he did this documentary about bipolar a while back, and you know, he spoke to a bunch of people, and he asked this, and the documentary maker, you know, posed this question, which Stephen Fry asked to all these people, and he said, if you were given the choice to press a button, and if you pushed that button, you'd get rid of all the pain and misery of the depressions, but you'd also get rid of that fire, that exuberant mood that is the opposite of that. Would you choose to get rid of this this part of you? And everyone except for one person said no. And the one person who said that they would get rid of the lows and the highs was a poor old lady who'd taken a drill to her head in the hope of getting rid of some of that, in the hope of clearing the pain. So in a couple of minutes, I'll read you out a poem that I wrote. It's called "The Unfurling of a Forgotten Flower," and so it's very sentimental. So if that's not your type of thing, probably stop watching. But you've got that to look forward to if you are interested. But I'll try and keep this brief because it's already 14 minutes. Well, I don't really know. Yeah, it's a big. Again, yeah, we'll have to come back to this in depth, but I guess I'll go big and then I'll zoom into the present. So like, part of the story of the bipolar is, I think, so I discovered the devil's lettuce, or Mary Jane, or there are all sorts of hilarious names for that. Wacky Backy, or etc. etc. That green elixir. So I discovered cannabis at quite a young age, about 13. I started smoking when I was 13, and then quite heavily by the time I was 14. And I just started experimenting with drugs, and like we all do. But I was very, very small. Nowadays I'm average height, thank heavens. But throughout my entire life, up until the age of 18, I was always the smallest person in my year as a boy. So like, during school photos, I'd be the last in the queue, or like, joint last. So when I was 14, I was very small, and so I had like the circulating volume, probably like an 11-year-old. So by the time I was 15, I was smoking weed every single day, without fail. And there were many fun times, and I look back on many fond memories. But I did get addicted, and being addicted to anything is, it means it's out of your control, and it's not good. And then I also did, at quite a young age, with a very small circulating volume, I was dabbling in the class A's and also psychedelics. So I'll kind of leave that there, but yeah, maybe save LSD trips, especially for very, very minute for your age. Save LSD trips for a later stage in life, perhaps. But there's a lot to be said for the psychedelics. So I think there's no doubt that they contributed to my bipolar. Although there is a history of depression on my mum's side going back for a long time. And so me and my brother my older brother, both smoked copious amounts of ganja in our time. And I think that hasn't been particularly helpful for our mental health. I was lucky that when I got expelled from school, I was kind of like, I should probably stop smoking weed. So that was really helpful. So I'd only just turned 17. In fact, I got expelled just before I was 17. And so I pretty much stopped then. I dabbled, Now I've completely stopped. I don't touch the stuff. But after I got expelled, I've only smoked. Probably count on the fingers of two hands the number of times I smoked after that. So so after I got expelled, I had a very so I will keep this very short. I had very, very bad depression in upper sixth. I had my first sort of bipolar high, I would say, during my expulsion. And so what's crazy, listen to this. So I just had a crazy few weeks, and the bipolar high definitely contributed to, it was the straw on the camel's back. The expulsion was coming. They were waiting. They wanted to make an example out of me. I'd been on the wrong side of trouble too many times, and they had to, say that, you can't do this kind of stuff. You can't get involved in these kinds of misdemeanors over and over and over again, general MCS pupils, and live to tell the tale. So they were, but the bipolar high definitely contributed to. So get this, there's this thing called the Oxford Arts Festival, which is like the big festival in the great city of Oxford in the summer, and it was set up it's set up by Magdalen College School, MCS, by a lovely teacher by the name of Dr. Anne Cotton, or Arthur Higgins if you're watching, DC Cotsby to you and me. I won't say the joke, but you know what the joke is. So there's a big festival, and there's all sorts of amazing events, and I in no way do I want to say that the Playhouse play is the highlight of the arts festival, because there are super famous speakers that come to speak, and so it's just a wide variety. But there are a bunch of plays put on by the school and by other things, but I would say that the pinnacle play, so to speak, is one that was put on in the Oxford Playhouse, which is Oxford's sort of main theatre, really. And so it's an amazing opportunity. So this lovely professional actress called Joanne Pierce and her husband Adrian Noble, who was the fucking director of the Royal Shakespeare Company for 10 years, one of the most humble guys I've ever met. That's a story for another day. Anyway, so they used to run, they'd come in and they'd run, anyway, and so we do this play. And in the year, so I'd done it the year before, I was Mole in Wind in the Willows, good old Mole. And then in the year I got expelled, they did a modern adaptation of Oliver Twist, and I played the Artful Dodger, who in this adaptation was called JD. And so that kind of, the Artful Dodger just kind of fitted in with, I do like to sort of method act and kind of become, if I'm really going to give a performance, I kind of have to be the character and so looking back in retrospect, over the years, it definitely did contribute to the fact that I got expelled, the fact that I was in the mood of Artful Dodger, for X amount of hours every day. Anyway, all this long, tedious spiel that is probably boring you to say, I got expelled on the Tuesday of a week, of the final week of school. On Tuesday was the tech rehearsal at the Oxford Playhouse. On Wednesday was the dress rehearsal of Oliver Twist. On Thursday, Friday and Saturday were the performances of Oliver Twist at the Oxford Playhouse, which was the sort of, and so this was the key, this was the sort of crowning jewel of the school's display. So I got expelled on Tuesday and had tech rehearsal the same day, dress and performances. And I was the lead role in school's crowning. Anyway, so that was a mad week. That was a fucking crazy week. And the stress of the play also contributed to the sort of bipolar high and everything. And anyway, the story of my getting kicked out of school is a funny one. So I won't tell it now, but anyway, bipolar. There you go. There you have it. So that was a crazy, crazy week. But anyway, to zoom into today, I guess the reason I decided to talk about it, this topic today specifically, was I've had a terrible week. So I've been doing well all year, all of this university term, up until about 4 days ago. And for the last 4 days, I've been bedbound. And yeah, had experienced the sort of crushing, bitterly crushing sort of bipolar low. Anyway, so there's not really much to say, but somehow I've got out of it. And that's the annoying thing with bipolar, is when you're in the grips, the miserable grips of a low, like you're so powerless. You're so powerless. And it's so frustrating that, you know, you fully, it's not that you don't know what would help you. It's not that you don't know what you should do. It's not that you don't know that going for a run would help. It's not that you don't know that seeing one of your friends would help. It's just that that's the last thing you want to do. The things that you know will help most are the last things you want to do. Isn't that weird? And when someone calls you, you know that picking up and speaking to them is the best thing for you to do, and to talk to. But picking up the phone is the last thing you want to do. And so it's just so fucking annoying, if you'll pardon my French. But yeah. Anyway. Kind of rambled for 27 minutes. I don't really know what ground I've covered, but I've said some things. And if you're still watching, then I don't know how you've managed to get through that, but thank you. My flatmates. So I thought I'd finish with a poem called The Unfurling of a Forgotten Flower. So it's probably overly sentimental, so forgive me for that. I think I wrote this maybe 3 weeks ago. I went to a, what do you call it? A shisha bar. I went to a shisha bar on my own just to relax one evening. And yeah, I was just sitting there enjoying the evening. And I thought I'd write this. It's been sort of something that I'd... Anyway, so it's Unfurling of Forgotten Flower. I won't ramble on too long, but I'll just give you a little bit of context. So it's about sort of like... Yeah, there have been times in my life where it's been pretty hopeless. That's the strange thing about a bipolar low, is like, even the last 4 days, like, the worst part of it is despair. It's funny, like, I'm actually quite comfortable, thanks to, like, having a phone and just being able to just lounge around. Like, it's not that, it's just like, your entire future seems bleak, and everything that you thought was positive in your life, you're sure was a lie, and you know that anything that you thought you were good at was just arrogance, and any plans that you had were just foolish, and everything seems bleak. And it can happen like over a period of 24 hours. Anyway, and so there have been some times in my life where, many times, where things have just felt so hopeless and despairing. And anyway, so I just thought I'd reach back inside of myself and try and write a poem of optimism. And so here it is. And it touches on my faith. And for those of you who are who look down on people with a faith, you may think I'm an idiot and I'm comforting myself with a made-up illusion to make me feel better. But I'm more confident about my faith than I am in many things in life. Faith is not blind faith, like people like Richard Dawkins would tell you that it is. It's not something that you believe without evidence. There's intellectual rigor and argument to the best explanation that provides a solid foundation for religious belief. But then on top of that, anyone who's there's something called religious experience, and there are things that happen in your life suffice to say, I'm not a fool. Okay. The unfurling of a forgotten flower. Crouched in the corner, a wilted flower once wept a silent tear. Winter went on for weeks, months, years. Summer's season seemed a memory, and hope felt distant. Today that tear has dried, and the chinks of light that seemed forgotten are breaking through, and the water of friendship gives me courage. I found my smile in a locked drawer, and in another my poet's pen. In one drawer I found my Bible and the man that gives life to all men. Only later did I discover that that drawer was never locked. You see, only looking back can we give thanks for the hard times. For the fog is always too thick to see the shore when we are in the storm. And the rain and the wind are always too loud, and we cannot hear God in the storm, and we doubt, and we doubt, and we doubt that God can hear our prayers, our cries. Anyway, that's a tale for another day. But life is good today. I haven't got my sea legs yet, but my boat is sailing straight. My compass is true, and my North Star is the kingdom of God. The wobbles of life will take care of themselves. Tomorrow's troubles will worry about themselves. One day's bread is plenty. I wait on God for light on the next step. I have found that often the planned path that I had picked was not part of the plan. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.